All right, I guess we can get started.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I'm Mike Waskosky, and I'm here with my friend Jacob Cox. Um, Jacob is one of the more spiritual people in my community in Colorado Springs here. I've been friends with for a while, and it's just always fun to talk to him about spiritual topics. And Jacob is just as fond of Jesus as I am, and I thought it would be fun to have a conversation about Jesus specifically
Yeah,
with Jacob.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. I mean, it's definitely something that I feel like in some circles it's hard to have that conversation about Christ because there's a lot of projection on what he might be as opposed to really the truth of who Christ really was. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So what was your journey like? Did you grow up Christian, and did you have a awakening at some point that shifted you in some way?
I did, yeah. So for me, honestly, even as a kid, I felt, I was one of those kids that felt like, how was I born into this family or whatever? Like I felt like different from not just my mom and my dad and my brother, but just like aunts and uncles and cousins, and they were all these really God-fearing people. And I actually grew up like Pentecostal, and I remember being a little kid and seeing grown-ups and adults speaking in tongues, and they would just run up and down the aisle and just blah 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 blah. And I'm just like a little kid, and I'm just like I questioned that a lot, and I just didn't think that was real language. I didn't feel not that I didn't feel that it was possible, but I just didn't feel that someone could do that. But I just didn't feel like at that moment that wasn't really what was going on, that it was more of a show than anything else. Mm-hmm. And so that's hard because you're a little kid and you're questioning the adults, and you really can't say anything to anybody about it. There's no one to talk to about that. You can't say anything to the preacher or your parents. So that was one of the first moments when I realized something was wrong. And then my dad asked me all the time, like, what I want to be when I grow up. And I just I don't want to be like y'all at all. So I want to, I knew there was something to figure out. And I had all these things that I knew I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be a police officer or a firefighter. I think those are great things, but it wasn't my mission. It wasn't what I was here to do. And I spent the most part of my life trying to figure that out. But yeah, we grew up Pentecostal, so we went to church every Sunday, Sunday night, Wednesdays. I went to Bible church a few times. And there were people that came and did events and things and teachings that I really enjoyed. And I felt like, even in Sunday school, that I was in those books. I was in the stories, when they were talking about David and Goliath and, Moses. And I would always have a great imagination where I would imagine being there with them. And I could feel the dirt and the sun and, walking around and the energy that was in that area at the time. And so I felt very connected to the Bible. So it's definitely something that I've studied a lot. I've read it, especially the New Testament. I went back and read it several times just to, kind of get my own spin on things and what are they really trying to say and convey, because I think there is that King James Version is a version, and certain words have been changed and altered, and some words have been left in. So, but anyway, yeah, I grew up Christian, and it was really tough. And the things that we were just told to believe, like just, Jesus is the only Son of God, and you have to believe in Him and be saved, and all the things that I think most people hear as kids. And I was from the South, so obviously it was God-fearing people where you need to be afraid of God, or God will judge you, or He'll be angry towards you. And so there was a lot of fear wrapped around it. And so I think that was really tough, and I really pushed away as I got older, more and more and more, to really just researching things for myself.
It's interesting that I had somewhat of a parallel experience, that I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and I saw people speaking in tongues, but I almost didn't care about that part because I didn't know what they were saying.
Yeah.
There was a part of me that's like, why don't they just record that and scientifically analyze it or something like that? And so there was a scientist in me that was always dissatisfied. Why isn't the church analyzing these recordings better?
Yeah.
But what so amazed me was when somebody would interpret the tongues, and it's like, wow, this person is saying something amazing that I've never heard the pastor say anything like that before. And so that put some seed deep in my consciousness that there's something very real going on there. And in my mind, eventually it became synonymous with channeling, that you're channeling the Holy Spirit, this is a process of tapping into something much deeper.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's become out of fashion in the Christian church more and more,
Mm-hmm.
even in the Pentecostal churches. I think
Mm-hmm.
to allow that kind of thing to be seen as non-demonic. It seems like everything that looks slightly out of what you would normally expect in your normal life, it seems to be called demonic more and more by the Christian church.
Yes, everything is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because a lot of the stories when I talk about speaking in tongues, I feel like it's referring to the fact that these really above average humans were speaking in their own tongues, their own language, and other people heard what they said in their own language. Because back then, you got Greek and Aramaic, and everybody's, a lot of people who are speaking different languages, and they can't speak Greek or they can't speak this. And so I think what a lot of it is referring to is the fact that someone could speak, and even though you didn't speak the same language, you could hear the message in your brain as if they were speaking your language. And I think that was really what they're referring to.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, as far as speaking in tongues goes, and that I do 100% believe in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to eventually get to this story that you shared with me recently about having a profound experience with Jesus. Do you feel there was anything that led up to that, or was there any significant periods in your life where you had a fresh awakening to what Jesus represented and who Jesus was for you?
Wow. Okay. So are you talking about the experience with the healing, the guy with cancer or whatever?
When you felt Jesus come into you?
Okay. So yeah, that's a big story. So basically in 2007, I graduated from college, and I had this degree, and I was supposed to go, make my own way in the world, and I felt like I didn't have any real information, any real skills to go out there and do, be this person, have this job. And I felt like the huge things that people didn't talk about. What happens when people die? How do you deal with that? How to work through things in life, stress and pain and agony and those kind of things. And I didn't know, I'm a psychology major, so that was why I stuck with that, because the first thing they said was jealousy is something you project on someone else because you think they'll do the same thing you do. And I was like, this is my major right here. That's the first time I've heard any teacher ever say anything of value to me that, like, of course, 1 + 1 is 2, and that's helpful. But, that was one thing that really stuck with me. It's like, this is something I'm going to stick with. So I'm
Say that line again. What was it? Jealousy?
He basically said that jealousy was the projection of your thoughts onto someone else. So if you're in a relationship with someone and you're jealous that they're going out and hanging out with other people, it's because you think they would do what you would do. Mm-hmm. So if you would cheat in that circumstances, you think they would, and so you're really jealous, And so I was like, okay, all right, I can feel that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen to me, and I'm willing to admit that I've felt that way, and that's probably why, So that's why I said, okay, psychology is going to be my major, and that's what I'm going to study, and along with many other things. But that was what I graduated in. So after that moment at 2007, I remember watching Nostradamus and reading books about things, but it was always kind of kept to myself. I never said anything about that stuff to anybody else. I remember being in my fraternity house watching Nostradamus in 2000 and on TV, and just locking the doors and being like, I don't want anybody to walk in on this. I could do anything in this room I wanted to, but I felt the judgment would come if I'm watching Nostradamus on TV. But I was extremely attracted to it. His prophecies, and that he had this intuition that was beyond everybody else. And I was like, how do I get that? I want that too. I was like, I know it's got to be possible. So when I graduated, I basically just looked up to the universe and said, all I know is I don't know anything. I don't know anything. And I've grown up Christian my whole life, and I resonate with Christ and the people in those stories, and I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I think somehow it's just a little bit, watered down, and manipulated just a tiny bit somehow. And I'll be honest, and I have to go read some other books and learn about some other saints and mystics, and if Christ is the one, then I'll find it for myself. There'd be no denying that. I'm totally open to that. But if Buddha has some validity to him, or Krishna or Allah, then I'm open to it. So I basically said it to the universe as I'm saying it to you right now, with all the intention in the world that this was what I was going to do with my life. And it was not to tell anybody. It was not to override, the old programs or tell my parents about. It was just strictly for me to learn and because I felt like I was empty. I felt like I was poor in spirit, and there's more to it, and I need those answers. So as soon as I did that, it was almost like the universe started leaving little breadcrumbs. So the first thing I did was I started reading the Bible from page 1, you know, and I started reading Genesis and, you know, about Adam and Eve, and then going through the Moses and Numbers and Deuteronomy, and just going through, and like I said again, using that imagination. I felt like I was there, and just being around there and listening to them and watching him, and, you know, what does he look like? What does he feel like, you know? And so I just kept reading and reading and reading, and I read the New Testament is where it really was for me, like to hear the teachings of Christ were incredibly important. I mean, especially if Christ is the end-all be-all of deities, and the Bible is the only Word of God. I mean, what's the most important thing in there? And that's the words written in red, you know, the things that he spoke, the parables that he said, what did they mean? So that's where I really got into it, and I started to dig in. So after I started reading these things, that intuition that we were talking about earlier, one day I had this incredible intuition that was just like, as you talking in the back of my head, and it said, now read an alchemy book. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. This has never happened, but I'll read an alchemy book. That sounds, you know, something I could get a hold of and figure out. I don't know much about it. This was, you know, probably 2007. So I'm going to check it out and read it. And sure as I did, I was in just a couple of chapters, and then I heard the voice again say, now go back and read the Bible. I just read 3 or 4 chapters probably, you know. And I was like, well, I thought you said to read this alchemy book, you know? And it was just like kind of back and forth. And I'm like, am I a little bit crazy here? But I'm hearing this voice, but it's saying do these things. And so I did. And I was like, all right, fine. It just kept saying it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. It was really loud.
And it was really definitely good. The same voice telling you to read the alchemy book that was telling you to read the Bible.
Mm-hmm. It was just like this, just totally can hear it. I don't think it was audible, like if someone else was in the room would have heard it, but I could hear it in my head. No doubt about it. It was just that intuition. And so I was like, all right. And so it just do it. I opened up to the middle somewhere because, you know, the Bible's a big book and I didn't know where to start. But I'm trying to follow this thing, and it's really kind of magical, and it's, you know, like I feel like I'm on to something, and these universes give me a little bit of breadcrumbs here and there. And so I just opened up the book and I start reading, and I found in that same exact page, within just reading the first couple sentences, there was the builders that the stone that the first builders rejected, and it was like in quotation marks separated by a space, and then there's another sentence, and those are exactly almost word for word sentences that I saw in the alchemy book. And so it was just like, what is alchemy in the Bible? You know what I mean? So I'm blown away all of a sudden, just like everything's just like, wow, why are these things, and these things shouldn't be in the same book, and they're not in the same realm. And then as I'm like mind blown, I could just feel unconditional love just like coming in, and it felt like I didn't see anything, but for me it just felt like all of a sudden angels surrounded me, and they were just like looking at me like, go Jacob, you know, and they were just like clapping, and he's getting it, he's figuring it all out. And I just like bawled out crying. I just felt this unconditional love that I've never felt before come into my body and just take me over. I think that's what people call the Holy Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, but to me it was a very, you know, incredible moment where I was overtaken with emotion and feelings and crying in the room by myself. And I felt like I was with, you know, a bunch of other people, ancestors or angels, whatever, I don't know. But at that moment I decided that I would just continue with whatever the intuition said. I would continue with this journey, that I was on the right page, or was on the right path to getting there, getting something, whatever it was, I don't know. But obviously the Bible and alchemy are really important.
So let's stop there for a second and talk about that line specifically. I've actually been strongly drawn to that line, not knowing it was part of alchemy.
Oh, really?
The stone the builders rejected is the cornerstone, is the keystone.
The cornerstone, the keystone, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't remember word for word, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a philosophy that you can apply into a lot of areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like what are people actually missing, and why are they missing that part of the importance of a foundation of a structure?
What do you think the cornerstone is?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about, I guess. Yeah. I'm curious, what was your interpretation when you first saw that?
My first interpretation is I had no idea, really. I had no idea, and I just knew that it was something, and knew it was something big. You know, but with these metaphysics, there's multiple meanings on multiple levels. But my interpretation now that I feel like is the most secret, you know, deepest one that I can get to, is that the pineal gland, that it's like a stone or you know, it's kind of like pulling the sword from the stone, the sty from the eye. That is this cornerstone of spirituality that people have rejected. That is that intuition. That is the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's what that is. That's mostly what I think of it, especially since it's alchemy too. And alchemy is not just making base metals into gold, but it's turning your body into this golden state of spiritualness or whatever, you know. So being holy.
Yeah, part of me feels like our entire personalities are based on like layers and layers. We're building up our personality. We're building up our ego, our emotions, based on some foundation that we don't always root in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like the cornerstone could be Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
It could be humility.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like these principles are kind of all a part of what I see as the foundation of a spiritual path to humble yourselves to the core of what it is that you want and who you think you are, and cutting away everything else and getting to that basis that the builders seem to reject, the builders of religion, the builders of every system, who are trying to create something to glorify themselves very often. And it's like a process of just recognizing what actually is the foundation.
Yes, and I totally agree with that, because I've come to that conclusion as well. As I said, it has multiple levels of meanings, I believe. But definitely one I thought was that people that were building things and buildings and places and stuff were missing out on sometimes the spiritual aspects of life as well, that they were rejecting that. So I you know, and that could be, you know, Masons or who knows whatever else, but I think that they're just talking about, you know, people who are building things as opposed to these kind of magical, wizardly people who just kind of lived on the planet, and they didn't seem to have a home or a temple to worship in. Like the earth was their temple, and you know, and their body was their temple, and they just seemed to kind of wander. You know, people like Merlin and Christ and Buddha and stuff, they didn't seem to reside in any one place. So I feel like when we build up in these homes and everything, we kind of forget that, you know, we're these wild animals too at some point, you know, and that we can just travel the world and we don't need the things that we need sometimes. So yeah, it's a good topic, and it's one that, you know, I don't think anybody's really too wrong about it, because there's a lot of things that it definitely points to. And I think that's one of the, you know, Christ said the kingdom of heaven is a mystery. And I think that's what's so incredible about learning about these things, is because there's still things that I'm learning that I'm still trying to understand as much as possible. And that's exciting, because it's not like this is what you have to do, this is it, that's all you have to do for your spirituality. No, there's a lot. This is a mystery, and we have to dig in to take a good bite of that, and, you know, like feel it and be in it and live it. So
yeah, there's so many subjects we could go into. Maybe we should get back to that story that leading up to the experience that you had with Jesus.
Yeah. So again, just reading the books after that, after the experience of the angels things, and I was just like, I knew I was on the right path. So I just kept digging for stuff. And I had acquired a autoimmune disease myself, and about the age of 19 or 20, something doctors kind of refer to as urticaria, urticaria, something like that. And it's basically just like your skin gets really itchy, and if you scratch, it forms welts. If you just barely write on yourself, I could make my whole name like bubble up. It was really awful, and the only thing I could take was like Benadryl to make myself feel better, and that makes you extremely tired, you know. So going through school and everything, taking that stuff, and it was really tough. Otherwise, I'm itchy or I'm tired. So what do? So I just wasn't satisfied with that. The doctor said they can't fix it. They can only give you these pills to make you feel better, and we don't know how it happened, and we don't know how to get rid of it. You may have it forever. It may go away at some point. We really don't know. And I was like, I just wasn't satisfied with that. There's got to be more. So that dis-ease really pushed me over the edge to being like, okay, how, you know, am I responsible for this? How can we get to the bottom of it? And I just started learning about all kinds of things. And one of the things that I learned about was Reiki energy healing, that people could put their hands on you or not even touch you and heal certain aspects of the body. And so I was like, I'm into that. I'm not, you know, if the doctor can't do anything, why not at least try it? And so for me, that was just, okay, I'm accepting of that. I'm going to go try. So I went to a metaphysical place. They did healings on Thursday nights, and they just had a massage table, and, you know, everybody was there, was asked to participate if you wanted to put your hands on people, and then, you know, just do your own form of Reiki. It was really a loose kind of nobody's wrong, do what you want to do type thing, which is really cool. But I think I was one of like the first people to go. Yeah, probably the first person to go. I remember being really excited about, yeah, let's do it, let's go. So I got on the table, and people put their hands on me. Some people ran their hands over me, and you know, I'm no Reiki master, but I had done a little bit of research, and I agree that the hands-on healing that Christians talk about was this Reiki healing, just called by different names. And so after I was done, you know, 10 minutes or whatever on the table, 15 minutes, I got up and I sat down, and I felt good, felt great. You know, I was like, okay, that was good. And I'm just going to sit here and watch and just soak the rest of this in and be in this energy. And, you know, that's good. As soon as I said that, though, a voice in the back of my head was like, now it's your turn. That's exactly what it said.
Wow.
Now it's your turn. And I knew that meant that I was supposed to go get up, put my hands on people. And I was like, I didn't come here to give healings. I came here to get a healing, not to give. You know, I'm the one that's sick. But it just kept saying it, nope, it's your turn, it's your turn. And it just like pushed me. And I was just like, okay, dude, I just, you know, I'd done a little research. I knew what I was supposed to think, allow that energy to come through me, that it wasn't coming out of me. It was coming through me and through my chakra system and out my hands and stuff. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting my hands around people and over people and kind of saying that prayer, feeling that energy, imagining that light coming through. And it felt great. You know, it was amazing. I felt really a lot of gratitude to do it. And felt like that's part of the mission. I felt like that's what I came here to do, was that the sickness, to get sick, to get better after getting sick, that was part of it. Like you had to be at ease now. You had to reach out and do some different things. So I started doing it, and this one guy started coming. His name was Paul, and he had, I think, 4 different types of terminally ill cancer. And it was sad, you know, but this guy was actually the most positive, upbeat, beautiful man that I'd ever met, you know, and he's just like so full of life. And I was just like, wow, dude, this guy has 4 different types of cancer. He probably will die, but he's happier than anybody I ever met. I was like, that's insane. I don't get it. So I made friends with Paul, and I talked to him, and he was just like the coolest guy ever. And I just couldn't get it. I couldn't, you know, I'm suffering so much. I'm angry. I'm sad. I got all these things going on, but this guy's dying, and he's so happy. So we became friends, and he's come in every week, and just going around town. I lived in Atlanta then. Going around town, I would see him at all the metaphysical shops, all the healing, sound healing, and Reiki energy healings. He was at all of them, of course. You know, same thing like me. He's sick. He's like, I'm going to go do these things. But of course, he still went to the doctor. He still got the what's the stuff that they use to kill cancer, like radiation, chemotherapy. Yeah. So he still did that. So he came in a couple times every month, where he would be looking real bad. He looked terrible. And I think when he came in on those days, you wanted to do more. You felt more compassion. You felt more love for him. You wanted to cure him, or be the facilitator by which the cure could come. So I just felt like I was trying harder. And so one of the times that he came in, we're doing our thing, and he's laying on the table, and there's 7 or 8 people at least on the table. Just, somebody's got their hands on his head, and I'm just moving my hands around his body, trying to spin the chakras, feeling energy come through and going into him. And then, like at this moment, I just started to feel that similar feeling of unconditional love, right? It's coming in, and it's starting to get strong, and I'm starting to get a little weepy, and then as soon as that started happening, it was like this energy just coming up, and it just walked up and it stood right next to me, and it was Christ. It was like Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? It was like, no doubt about it. It didn't feel like Buddha. It didn't feel like Krishna. It felt like Christ, and it felt like he was standing there looking at me, proud, and all his unconditional love and all his power and all his resonance and everything. And it was just like overwhelming. And like I just started crying, and I just started, overwhelmingly crying. And so that went on for just a quick moment. And this girl across from me who's doing the same thing, she just all of a sudden goes out of the room. She just leaves the room. And I think that I've scared her, I'm crying at the table, a grown man, and I feel like I kind of freaked her out, and she just runs out the door. And as soon as she runs out the door and I start to feel these feelings, it was almost like that's when he turned towards me and just started walking up. And as he got closer and closer and closer, and I could just feel him so much more intensely, so much more power, so much more resonance. and it just got, you know, stronger, stronger, stronger. And then he like walked into my body, and I felt like that I had Jesus Christ in my entire soul, my entire body, and it was just like, you know, just like this incredible sound bowl of just resonance, just like permeating through every cell and every part of me. And I felt the unconditional love, and I felt the power, and I felt that it wasn't something to think that you had. It was something that you knew you had, and it's something that you went around with every day, every second of every day. It wasn't that something that you had at church while you were there. It was a presence and an energy that that was with you all day long, and that you could live in this state. Like, this was a powerful, like, and at that moment, those feelings of, you know, anger or resentment or sadness, I had none of them. You know what I mean? You're resonating at this incredibly high frequency of.
What was going through your mind?
So, I mean, really just, this is crazy almost, you know, but I'm feeling all these feelings as if they're not even mine, you know. It's almost like I said, again, it's like, I just felt this, like that was him, and he came in and he was just sharing it with me, you know. Like, I felt like, to an extent, I had to be open. Like most people are closed off. Like, that's what it felt like, that I was an open bowl, and that because I had said that to the universe that day, I was like, I don't care who's right, who's wrong, what it is and what it ain't. And I'm like, I just want to know the truth. And I think that's what Christ said when he said, you know, seek the truth, you know what I mean? The real, organic, raw, whether anybody believes it or don't believe it, truth that'll set you free. That's what I was looking for my whole life, and here it came, and it walked right into my body, and I felt it, and I felt like, this is, like I said, this is a power that you should walk around all day. It's not like a book, it's not like a religion, it is a, you know, a feeling. When people talk about let Christ into your heart, that's what it felt like. He came into my heart, my whole body, my whole being, and then that's who I knew that I was supposed to be. And this probably went on for, man, I would say 30 seconds to a minute max. I mean, not a very short time, you know, like just, but it felt like 1,000 years, you know. It felt like you're getting downloaded with this incredible information, and I'm just bawling out, crying, and eventually people just, all right, you know, and like, it just, he left, he was gone, and then they grabbed me, kind of sat me down in a chair.
Who grabbed you?
The leader of that metaphysical group.
Mm-hmm. So how many people were there?
I mean, Paul was on the table, and then, like I said, 7 to 8 people that were just standing up, and then maybe a couple of people who were sitting down. So probably 10 to 15 max, you know, because there's probably a few people waiting their turn to get on. Because some people came and they didn't do the healings, you know what I mean? Paul didn't do the healings. He just came in and got them, and other people just came in and got them, you know. And so we just sat down in a chair, and I'm like trying to wipe all the tears away and just, you know, calm back down. And like, this incredible experience just happened to me. Like, I've had similar experiences by myself, but that was probably the first one that was that was in front of other people. So I'm a little, you know, I don't want to say embarrassed or anything, but it was just like, oh my gosh, like I've got explaining to do now and everything. And so, you know, when I finally like calmed down, Paul got off the table and he's like, woo, you know, he was just like super stoked and excited. I mean, he was like, that was incredible. And I was
so what did he feel?
He just said he felt this incredible, powerful presence as well, and that it was, you know, a lot. And he was just, I can't remember his exact words because I'm just so, you know, so much going on with myself. But he basically, I remember him saying like, that was incredible, that was amazing, best healing he ever had. And, you know, he just felt so grateful and so thankful and everything. And so after he gets off and he says that, and everybody's like, all right, Jacob, like, what happened? And I was like, man, you guys wouldn't believe me if I told you so. And I was hoping that we would just end the story with that, and that we wouldn't have to go any farther because I was like, didn't really want to say like what happened because it was hard to even put into words. But they're like, no, you're not getting out that easy. You have to tell us what happened. So I was like, all right. So I'm standing there, started to feel this energy. Christ walks up, he stands there, and then at some point he walked into my body, and I lost it. And as soon as I said that, that girl who left for the bathroom, when she left the room, she comes back out and she says, oh my God, Jacob, I felt the exact same thing, but it was too overwhelming for me, and I had to leave the room. And that was like the universe, here's my breadcrumb, here's my confirmation that what you felt, even though I don't need it, you don't need it at all, but it's great for the story because I get to tell the story later on and say, somebody else said that they felt that too, besides Paul, you know, some other person doing the thing, doing the Reiki energy healing, and she said, I couldn't take it. It was too much. It was too overwhelming. So I guess she started to cry too, and she booked it. And I was the one, like I said, just a little bit more open, a little bit more hungry. And so I got it. I got that healing. So me going to get healings, I think that was the day that a lot of things changed for me, and to realize that Christ was more than just a name or something you read in a book, but it was an energy that we can all feel and be like him, you know, be like Christ. It's not just believe in the Christ, but like we need to be like that, you know, be loving, be unconditional loving, be truth, be honesty, be all the things that people talk about, but rarely ever just hold in you, and without anybody, you know, trying to impress anybody or anything else. Like, you're doing it because you know that's what you were called here to be this incredibly powerful, strong, honest, loving being, not for any kind of money or any kind of acknowledgement, because that's who you are. So yeah, it was really incredible. And then, like I said, when I told them all, and they're all just like, wow, that's super cool. It's kind of like, that's really neat. And yeah, it was just that confirmation again that I was doing the right things that I was supposed to do. My intuition was telling me to go to these places, and I would go and have experiences. And so, you know, that was I've had other experiences with Christ now, but I would say that was probably the most profound.
Do we know what happened with Paul, if he's doing?
So Paul, he ended up getting really sick, and he went to a hospice, and he didn't really go walking around or anything like that. This is such a cool story, though. I'm glad you said something, because I would have forgot. So he went to hospice, and he was no longer really able to move or walk or go any places. But he was my friend, and so that girl who walked out, we both talked to him, like, we'd really like to go see Paul at the hospice and do healings on him still, you know, no matter what. And she's like, all right, let's go. And so we went, and we did a couple healings on him, and you know, he kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and we both like, he's probably not going to make it. And I was like, man, it's so weird. Like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, we're supposed to heal Paul. You know, that he's going to be okay. And so there was a lot that was like troubling about it. That I was like, I felt like I was supposed to be here and supposed to help Paul. And so, anyways, Paul passes on. He transitioned, and I felt like I was supposed to go to his funeral. And his funeral is at like a Catholic church, you know. He's like Catholic guy, but he's going to these spiritual things. So like he grew up to be Catholic and be in that church, and he goes every day. But then as he got sick, his disease is what changed his life to go and be in metaphysical and learning new ways and opening, same as I did. And so I went to his funeral, and it was funny because a small group of us went that were his metaphysical friends. And I remember, you know, I was crying and stuff, and it was a funeral that was sad, not like, you know, some ones we go to today where people are rejoicing that they are here and they existed and all that stuff. It was a sad funeral. And then I remember sitting in like their fellowship hall at the end with one metaphysical person that came with me, and then 3 or 4 people who were part of his Catholic church, and we were all sitting together. And we were talking about God and the other side and all these things. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go. I felt like I needed to. And I was just talking about Paul and that, you know, spiritual aspect of him coming to do the Reiki healing. And you could see their faces like, oh my God, he was doing that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, it was awesome. It was great. And then as I'm talking about this, I felt Paul walk up. Paul walked up right behind me on the right side, on the same side that Christ walked on me. He walked up and he stood there. And although I didn't see him, I just felt him. And I felt this huge smile on his face. And I felt this like huge victory that he had won, that he had brought his Catholic people church to come to the metaphysical world. And that even though at this moment they may not be like, oh, you're right, you're so right with this. It's that moment of they can't unhear this. You know what I mean? Like your religion or something that keeps you inside doors. There's going to be something that comes and knocks on the door one day that wakes you up. There's going to be some person that you can't hide from it, you know? Yeah. And so he was like, he felt incredibly grateful and excited that he had brought these Catholic people, these religious people to us and us to them to learn and gain from each other. And I felt that day, I was like, now I know why we weren't supposed to heal Paul. Paul was there to heal us, you know? Yeah. And I was like, wow. Oh. I got the healing that I was looking for, you know. It was great. Because eventually, with healings like that, and then learning to eat better and things, it's been several years that I've had any kind of breakouts with urticaria. I think that realizing that my emotions were detrimental to my body and my thoughts and my feelings, and and just being open has really changed my health a lot. And so I haven't had a breakout like that in many years. So I'm really thankful. But yeah, the healing that I went to go get, I got, and Paul healed me more than I could have healed Paul, I think. And that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. This is really interesting how this ties into everything, because it's like ultimately what we're trying to do in talking about these subjects is to try to help heal the divide that's kind of been created between different spiritual communities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been very challenging for me. I've been going to a Christian church all my life. I've been going to I like the Assemblies of God Church. I grew up in the Assemblies of God, and I've been enjoying that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had to, as I learn more things, I recognize, there's no one who has these fundamentalist Christian beliefs who has any awareness of so many different subjects that are now being called New Age and
mm-hmm.
metaphysical. But in my mind, it's kind of like it's almost like we have the true spirituality that's being uncovered by people who investigate
mm-hmm.
really deeply into all manner of subjects, and then we have what feels like a kind of a dead church. Now there's certainly parts of the Christian church which are strongly pursuing Jesus and strongly finding unconditional love and touching that aspect of Jesus,
mm-hmm.
the Holy Spirit, basically. But it also seems like there's a structure around Christianity which is kind of self-supporting, and it's like a kind of Pharisee system
mm-hmm.
where people are recognizing the rules, trying to follow the rules, and making the rules the point of it,
mm-hmm.
and missing the real relationship aspect of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Which leads to a miraculous life that
yes, and all life-altering experience that it's like you can't deny. And I think that's really true. And one of the things that Christ said was, work for the food that your heavenly Father provides, not the food that spoils. And I think that is a part too why that they fasted, he fasted, and many other spiritual people talk about fasting. And stay hungry, stay hungry in life. And information, spirituality is something to be hungry for just as much as food. But if you're full and you're sitting on the couch all day and you're not hungry for life, you're not hungry for the spirituality, you're not hungry for the truth, like it is like a really needed feeling or experience to have to be hungry for the truth. And I feel like that is what draws the experience. And it's not just saying that I ask Christ with words to come into my heart, and that he's there, and because of that I'm okay. Like, it is something that is a big deal. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of feeling. It takes a lot of emotion. It takes a lot of intention to look out to the universe and say, I really need this to come in and happen. And I'm open to however it comes, and it may look a little different than I may think it might happen. So I think to be hungry like that, to really want it, like you have to say it and talk to God or the universe as if it's you, like you're sitting here right now. Like I had full intention that that's what I was going to do. I was going to find out some kind of truth, and I was okay if God didn't exist, or atheism was right, or Buddha was right, or Christ was right. I was totally fine with any of those things. And I think you have to get to that point where I'm open to whatever the truth is. And that's dangerous because, like I said, the truth doesn't need anybody to believe in it for it to be truth, and that's the kind of thing I think he's talking about, to be set free. And I do feel, free from, although I really subscribe and I consider myself to be Christian or Jewish or even atheist in some ways, because I don't believe that God is an old white man with a white beard and long white hair on a cloud judging people. But I believe it's the entirety of all of that, everything, all of us, it's everywhere, omnipresent, omnipotent. No matter where you look, no matter where you go, it's there. It's in every single person. It's in the air. It's in the water. It's in everything. When Moses, and he's talking to the burning bush, and it says, who should I say sent me to go free my people? And it didn't give a name. It says, I am that. I am. That's the name of God. And that was so powerful that it was against the law for people to say it. Because if you go around thinking it and you walk around town saying, I am that, I am that, I am, and you start to try to resonate with what that sentence is saying, and you realize, oh my God, eventually I think you come to the conclusion that God's saying, I'm all the that's that there is. There's nothing that I'm not. Treat every person, treat every situation, everything is sacred, everything is like God. And that's something that we should take seriously,
And when you had that experience of being with Jesus, is that the mindset you were in, seeing the sacred?
I mean, the mindset I was in was just, I was really unconditionally loving Paul so much that everything else about my own problems and everything were gone. That I was just focused in that moment at that time. Like I was really, you know, believing as much as I possibly could that, you know, he was going to get up off the table and there would be no cancer. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was as close as I could get to being in that zone on being there.
You also described that this is a state you felt like anybody could be in at any time if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think that would be like for people to get to that state?
If everybody was walking around like that, I mean, I think the world would be a lot less judgment, a beautiful place, you know, a Garden of Eden, a place where we recognize each other's sacredness and sovereignty, where we didn't impose our beliefs of religion or ideas of spirituality on people and let people be who they are. One thing that I resonate with that Christ said when they were, you know, trying to, and he's sitting in front of everybody and they're trying to ask him, like, you know, who are you really? You know, like, who are you? Because, you know, if you don't give us a good answer, we're probably going to kill you, you know? And he's like, I am whatever you say I am, you know? And I was like, man, he could have said anything he wanted to right there at that moment. He says, I am what you say I am. And I say those words over and over again, and I realized, man, he gave them permission for him to be whatever it is they want him to be. And really, that's so freeing. Like what I see in you and what someone else sees in you can be completely different. But what they see in you is based on who they are. And what I see in you is based on who I am and my perception of you. And I think, because some people didn't see him as this Messiah, beautiful, incredible, you know, loving. Some people saw him as doing miracles on Sunday. That's against law, and, you know, like, you're doing weird things, and maybe you're into some dark magic because you're healing people, you're making people see, like, and some people were very afraid of him. So it is really what you think it is, you know. But I do think if all of us were in this, or many of us, I think it would take a small number, actually, probably 144,000 maybe, of people resonating in that Christ energy or Buddha nature or Christian spirit, that we could stand around the walls of the Pentagon of Washington, D.C., and either hum, blow ram's horns, but do some kind of sound technology, and those walls and those institutions would fall to the ground, and we would build up again a new world where free energy and there'd be no lack, and people would have the things that they need. I think that's what the scripture of every religion really kind of states, is that, you know, it's something that we can all, a state that we can all reach. Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's super important, because it's not some place to die to go after it. The kingdom of heaven is within me, and I have to learn to know myself in order to find it out. And, you know, one of the things in Matthew says, those who sat in darkness saw great light. And what are you doing if you're sitting in darkness? You're meditating. And I feel like I've had a lot of great meditations, just sitting by myself in the dark, concentrating on relinquishing myself of being Jacob Cox, being a male, being white, being a person from a small town, and then just kind of took something from Albert Einstein when he said he was riding these waves where he came up with the theory of relativity and stuff. And so I listened to solfeggio tones, and I was pretending like I was these tones, and I became like everything there was in the universe. And I realized that's, you know, that was an spiritual experience, you know, to realize that I was not separate from the universe, that I wasn't just in it, but I was it in motion too, you know. And I think that was super powerful.
Going back just a little bit, I think it's very interesting that, you know, there's so much about the New Testament showing us that people were not expecting the Messiah to be what Jesus ended up being. Mm-hmm. They were expecting someone to reshape the institutions, and that we're gonna have a new kingdom through these new institutions that Jesus is going to set up for us, mm-hmm. the Messiah. And then Jesus is just completely loving, and then he's put on the cross. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that, you know, the disciples are all like, what the heck? How could this possibly be mm-hmm. what we were looking for? But what he demonstrated with his entire selfless incarnation mm-hmm. was that ultimately that's the power that we need to tap into, mm-hmm. is ultimately that selflessness. And that's what will really change the world. Mm-hmm. And it's not just, it's a miraculous thing. It's always a miraculous thing. And you don't have to, you know, go through all the conventional systems in order to arrive at a miraculous future. Mm-hmm. You just tap into that state, the heaven within. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, as we continue to focus within, we manifest the entire new earth spoken of in Revelation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like you said before, it's here now, and it's what you experience. It's your own individual experience. I think eventually we'll have some things that are going to happen. It's going to be a collective experience, but
Yeah.
I do think that, I mean, he said, there's nothing that I'm doing that you can't do. There's nothing that I'm doing that you can't do. You just have to believe and have that faith of a mustard seed. And the mustard seed is obviously this tiny little seed that grows in this huge big tree, and everything that it's in that seed to become that tree already. And everything that's in us to become these incredible light means already in us. It's not like we even have to do anything. To me, mostly it's just removing the barriers of condition and programming that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not this, you're not that, and just let them go. And I think part of understanding Christ is realizing that he came to destroy too. That is his creator, but it's also partly destruction as well. And he did kind of, it does say that he ran around tables chasing people with whips and told the Sadducees and the Pharisees that they were wrong. And I do believe that a part of it is destruction. It is bringing the old system down and building a new, like we see that happen with forests burned down every day, not every day, but often. And they give life to the new growth to come back in. And is that death wrong? Is it evil? Is it bad? It just is, and it gives, birth to the new stuff to come in. And so ages come and go, and civilizations come and go, and ideas come and go, just like they have life cycles like a person or a planet or a star does, And I think that's okay. And sometimes I think we do forget that he was, a tough guy in some way. And, he said when he come back, he'd come with a sword of truth, And some people really weren't going to like that. And I feel like that is what's happening, because some people are so dug in to their idea of what Christ is and what it looks like and how it's supposed to be, that they're not open to that experience. Because I always knew as a kid, even though people said, oh, I got Jesus in my heart, I'm saved and everything, and then I would be with them later on in that week or something, because these people usually that I was related to and hung out with my family, and then they would be completely racist or stereotypical towards others, and I was just like, I thought you said you had this in you. How could you be like that if you actually had it in you? So again, even as a kid, I'm recognizing that was just because you said it doesn't make it true. Yeah. That it is this organic, really, incredible experience, which is great. That's better to me, because I want something that's real that I can feel and I can tell a story about.
Yeah, there's so much we could talk about with the Christian programming. People are taught that salvation is mostly in American evangelical Christian circles. It's like once you're saved, you're always saved. I think that's been the most prominent philosophy. Although some people in Christian church are fighting over that dogma, and that certainly the Bible clearly says, Jesus was clearly teaching, unless you forgive others, you are not forgiven. And everyone has the experience that that's totally something we're always working on, is forgiving others, and increasingly, in that sense, as we open up to love for others, that love becomes more and more of our reality, and we find that kingdom of heaven more and more within us. It's not just a light switch you flip on.
Right? Don't you feel like when you finally forgive, especially yourself, that's the hardest person to forgive, but when you forgive others, like there's this release sometimes. I know one time I was doing yoga when I'm first getting into it, and I did that back bend, we're turning around, and I felt this euphoric release where I had kept my grudges, where I literally kept my grudges in my back, and I felt it release, and just kind of go out of the body and say you don't need it anymore, but you've held on to it, and this is causing back problems and physical pain by something that was, mentally or emotionally that you've done. You just didn't deal with it. You're just mad at people. You didn't forgive them. You held on to it, and holding on to it, I literally had it in my physical body, and it had, detrimental experiences because of, like I said, my back hurt and things like that. So, to realize that, there is a lot more to this thing than just some words on the paper and reading it out and knowing the scripture, that there's some real meat in there to take a bite of that most people never really want to be open to and experience.
I want to briefly touch on the subject of authority around scripture and things like that. Before I would line it, probably we should conclude on talking about more experiences you've had with Jesus, and maybe I could go into some of my own. But so when I first started learning about, it was the Disclosure Project, which kind of broke down all the walls around my brain, that I was so arrogant in my beliefs around Christianity that I was so correct in my interpretations of the Bible. I needed something just completely out of left field to kind of make me question. Maybe I actually have to research more and think a little bit more about things. And that was the UFO subject. But for me, ultimately, what I needed to awaken to was that I had a deep, deep fear that if I let go of my Christian community, if I let go of my belief in the inerrancy of Scripture as it's been taught to me, then I would somehow be broken, and I would be, fallen away from Jesus. And ultimately, what had to happen to me was I had to eventually investigate Stephen Greer's CE5 protocols, go out under the stars, just alone, meditate and pray, and eventually I recognized that profound moments of unconditional love and forgiveness that were happening to me while I was sitting under the stars would then be followed up by lights in the sky that were confirming that. And as I had these experiences more and more, I would question about Jesus, and whenever I brought up Jesus, the lights in the sky would flash at me and emphasize, we love Jesus. We love Jesus so much. You want to keep following Jesus. This is what we want. Yeah. And so that was very profound for me. That kind of helped anchor me more in recognizing Jesus is always the right path for opening your heart and recognizing what will unite us and not divide us anymore, getting back to Jesus. But ultimately, that fear that I had around giving up the Bible, in some sense, not that I didn't appreciate the Bible, but it was almost like I needed a process of recognizing the nature of the Holy Spirit leading me into the correct interpretations of Scripture. As the Bible says, the Spirit of truth, Jesus comes as the Spirit of truth and leads us into all truth through ultimately what we can recognize as the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. And a lot of times we don't always get that out of religion. People don't seem to be radiating love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. So ultimately, I think authority, it can't come from something that isn't yielding the fruits of the Spirit. It has to come from God, and God is represented by these by His nature. Yeah,
I totally agree, because just the fact that someone has gone to a Christian school or college or whatever, and now you have the authority to read the book and be a preacher or whatever, I just, I don't agree with that, because obviously Christ didn't have any kind of title like that. He was a carpenter's son, but he could heal people. So to me, you don't need to have a title. I think that's one of the reasons why we call them doctors and not healers. They have a title to be a doctor, to prescribe pharmaceutical drugs, to live in that realm of a doctor, but not a healer. And to me, if someone is healing, whether they have a degree or a certificate or whatever, but your results say that, I've cured someone's urticaria, or I've autoimmune disease, or I've made the blind see, then, that's the authority that I believe in and I trust in, because I've seen you do something, as opposed to, like I said, this doctor mentality where everybody's just, and those schools and colleges are funded by pharmaceutical drugs anyway, which is why they're so inundated with, taking pills to get better. But, a lot of times you see that a sugar pill, can make someone feel better even though they're sick. So a lot of that is our own thinking. And I think one of the things that when Christ did heal people is he said to them, do you know who I am? And what have you learned from these things? So there are definitely reasons to have disease and to be sick. And I think when we get off our spiritual path, when we hold on to grudges, when we are not well emotionally and mentally, they can transform into physical problems for ourselves. And we have to dig deep in order to find out, what is it that I've done that I'm responsible for, to learn how to heal myself. But even he could not heal people in his own hometown, no matter what it was, pretty much, because they all knew him as a kid. He didn't have this magic about him. He was just a regular old Yeshua, Ben-Hur from his town, and nobody believed it. So it is our belief, that cures us. That one of the girls that he healed came up and tugged on his coat, and they said, "Oh, thank you for healing me." He said, "It wasn't me that healed you. It was your faith that healed you. But if you keep sinning, worse things will happen to you. If you keep thinking negative thoughts, if you keep being angry and mean, and there's more negative things will happen to you." And so I realized that, man, our faith, that placebo effect of believing in something, no matter what modality, surgical or pill or holistic, if you believe in one more than another, that one's going to be the best one for you to take on and to use.
And it's very interesting how, in order to believe in something, you have to work through all of the programming around not believing it. And so ultimately, a lot of our problems stem from the things that we've been taught, the things that we just assumed, that we never properly questioned and allowed ourselves to be more open around. And once we can take back kind of our own power of belief, we recognize that this is actually more about free will. We're taking back our free will. And once we have free will, we actually are creating out of love. It's love is the energy that's not infringed upon by others. It's the energy that's open and always freely giving, without that tendency to try to put boxes on things.
To give people free will, that's the greatest love. I had an experience one time where I was on Tybee Island right outside of Savannah, Georgia, and I just felt like the need to say a prayer to the universe, to God, and I just looked at the ocean and I said, you know what, I'm just feeling great today. I'm thankful. I have so much gratitude in my heart just to be here and to be on this mission. I've had a lot of things happen to me so far, and I was like, if there's anything that you got for me today, man, I'm open to it. And I said that prayer, and then walked away and met up with my family, and we were eating lunch, and it again felt like, and it's usually on my right side always. Parents walked up and tapped me on the shoulder, and as I turned around, it was like he just gave me the whole Prodigal Son Parable download, just like that. Like I just knew exactly what it meant, and it was really incredible because it was like, again, that feeling of I'm open to this thing so that it can happen. And here it is happening in front of my family now. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And my parents are like, what just happened? And again, I'm like, oh, you guys wouldn't believe it if I told you.
So you were visibly shaken and your parents noticed? So what exactly happened? You felt Christ's presence?
Yeah, I felt like he just walked up behind me. Not into me like that one, but just next to me, close.
It was very moving.
And it was just like that unconditional love, the power. It was just like that's who it was, as if you didn't need to see it. That it was just the feeling of that's who that person is. There's no doubt about it. And he stood there and he tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around. And as I turned, it was just like everything just downloaded in what the prodigal son was. And then I told them, I was like, oh wow, I was just like, I had this something happened, and my parents were like, what happened? I was like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And they're like, let's go and try us, And I told them, I was like, Jesus just walked up and told me the parable of the prodigal son. And then I spit it out to them what it was and what it meant. And basically the big part idea is that that you have this father with two sons, and one son goes out and he wants all his money, and he goes out and he squanders it all, and he does all the bad things, right? And eventually he comes to the conclusion that his dad's slaves or whatever have a better life than he does at this point. He has no more money, so he has to go back. And he says when he gets to the fence and dad sees him, he just runs down there and puts his arms around him and loves him. And he doesn't ask him, where's the money at, where you been, what you been doing. He just comes over there and loves him and says, kill the fatted calf. And the Father is God. It's unconditional love that all of us, we go out from this light, go out from this peace and harmony, to go out into the darkness, into the world, and to face it, and to be with it, and realize that it's experience, it's okay, but God's always there waiting for us to come back and realize that God's unconditional love. And I think that the brother represented, at least to me, that because he didn't go out, he didn't understand that. He didn't understand the leaving the safe zone, leaving the light to go, because the yin and the yang, the darkness and the light, you need both. You need both experiences. So he's jealous and he's angry and he doesn't get it. And I think that's important. I think maybe we're all these souls, come out from the light, and we all have to make that decision at some point. Like, all right, now's the time. Now's the time to go. Now's the time to go off on our journey and our adventure and leave and realize and come back, and that we're always loved. We're always, cared for and all those things. And so it just made me realize that, man, God is unconditional love, and it's not anything else other than that. And that's what those feelings meant, and that's what the experiences are. And that's why you can be in that energy all the time, but how many of us really really are unconditionally loving towards others. And it's a duty. Christ said the biggest commandment they said is love everyone like I loved you. And then they'll know you're my disciples. You don't have to call yourself Christian or this, but like when people see you walking around loving, being caring about people, letting people be themselves and have their own free will, not imposing on them, but just helping and being there and being that person, dude, and you're lit up, they know it, man. You don't have to convince anybody of it. And I think that's so important that we are it, and we don't have to like go out and like say, oh, I'm a Christian or I'm this or that. It's like, dude, you just go out there and live your life and be the best you can be, and you will be a force to reckon with. You will be, just permeating out love and honesty and truth and wisdom. And the people who see that will be like, man, I want whatever you got. I need some of that.
One of the things that I really I've been thinking about lately about the Prodigal Son Parable is like we can still have a model of what the Christians would think of as salvation demonstrated by this parable, because the prodigal son is squandering the money and feels completely hopeless, completely lost. But it's the decision that the prodigal son makes to return. It's just the simple choice that I'm going to go back to love, even though you may not believe it. The prodigal son didn't believe that his father would be as loving. He was afraid still that there was some kind of a judgment to be had for him.
Yes, there was none, right? Yeah,
yeah. But it's like we can release the belief in that judgment at any point we want, but it's the choice to return that is the signal that we've chosen to have faith. The release of judgment will lead to this greater state of love.
Yeah, and that no matter what we've done, there's nothing that's unforgivable, or there's nothing that that can't be relinquished and let go of, and
Yeah, I guess ultimately we have to forgive ourselves to start on that journey.
Yeah, because he had to make that decision. He's like, I have to, these people over here are getting treated even better than me, and I can't live my life like this anymore. I'm just also going to just be humble and and override my own ego, because your ego would say, oh, I'm never going back to that. They'll look down on me. They'll judge me for the things I've done. I've squandered all the money. But I think a part of that too is relinquishing that attachment to the ego of, like you said, just, oh, I'm going to go back to love, man. That was a way better feeling. That was a way better way of living. And and I feel like all of us truly are the prodigal sons, and we've all gone away and out into our own world. And that's why it's honestly a lot of times better to get lost. Better to get really, really lost. Christ says better to be hot or cold than lukewarm. And to me, that's just an extreme. Have an extreme life. Be homeless. Be this. Be that. Go out and find that. You can be a millionaire and realize that you're still lacking in spirituality and love, and and so there's a lot of things that you're still missing. So whatever you're going to do, go out there and do it up. Like no judgment. Whatever you need. So I think that's incredibly important too. That I realized that like there's no amount of things that I've done wrong or bad that I need to worry about. At the end of the day, like if I can forgive myself and go back to being that loving being that I was, that's where I'll find the peace, and that's where I'll find the harmony and the magic again. So
yeah,
being like a little kid.
I think this is a great place to wrap it up here.
Cool. Yeah.
Any other things you'd like to share?
That was good. I enjoyed that a lot. I appreciate it a lot, Mike. So.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed it too, you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.